started. Let's see why Unreal Engine game ruining gaming. Let's see it. Let's see
Are
why
constantly
it's the
obsessed.
reason.
Everyone seems to love Unreal Engine 5. Gamers are constantly obsessing over the graphics showcases and begging studios to switch to the engine. Publishers love it because using it helps market their games and allows them to outsource their game development, and developers love it because it's often
Hmm.
easier to learn than some studios' proprietary engines. With few competitors on the
Hmm.
market that can achieve this level of graphical fidelity and technically impressive capabilities, while also still being very accessible, it makes sense why Unreal Engine is so popular. But is the obsession with Unreal Engine 5 actually ruining the gaming industry? Recently, we've seen several major studios announce
In a
they
sense,
switch to Unreal
yes.
Engine 5 for the future of their games. Recently, we've seen
Wait,
several major
what's that
studios
Star
announce
Wars?
their switch to Unreal
BioWare. Respawn Entertainment is Titanfall Apex
Engine 5
Legend. Our Star Wars Fallen Jedi. Oh, okay. Jedi. Both of the Jedi is made by Unreal Engine.
for the future
Okay.
of their games. We have CD Projekt Red ditching their in-house Red Engine in favor of Unreal, which based on visuals alone seems like an odd choice, as the Red Engine is at times even more graphically impressive than Unreal Engine. Microsoft has
Hmm.
rebranded 343 Industries into Halo Studios, who will now use UE5 to produce their future Halo games, and they will retire their proprietary engine that they spent years building specifically for Halo Infinite. BioWare is moving from
Hmm.
Frostbite to Unreal, which is probably for the best, as Frostbite is not great for third-person action RPGs. But BioWare has more important game development problems to solve at this point. Who knows if they'll even live
True.
long enough to launch Mass Effect 5. Crystal Dynamics
I think the most important part about Unreal Engine is just the generation. Like the level generation is way more easier to do that. So you can have like 10 times bigger map than Skyrim without no any effort. Like it can generate it. Like that feature is not available in other engines. I don't think so. Could be the
dropped their own
reason.
engine, and the next Tomb Raider game will be developed on Unreal. And GCS Game World have also dropped their own engine to swap over to UE5 for Stalker 2,
Yeah,
which is a
because
bit
it's a
concerning because
revolutionary
their
engine,
AI and
to an
NPCs
extent.
used a very specific type of technology from their own engine that allowed them to create some pretty unique behavior patterns that were a staple of the series in the past. The list goes
Hmm.
on and on. So many studios are now developing on the Unreal Engine. Now, that in itself isn't necessarily a bad thing
What
on the
game is that?
surface, but there are several major concerns I and many others have. This engine change comes with a lot of pros, but also potentially many cons. First, Epic Games essentially has a monopoly on the game engine market now. With each studio that switches
Mm-hmm.
over to Unreal, they will get a slice of the revenue on each game's sales. And they get to be the arbiters of controlling what type of games get made with the engine. Several months ago, we saw some pretty concerning censorship from Epic in regards to things your game can or cannot include, such as using words like blacklist and whitelist, slave, master, or nuke, or using gendered language like having dialogue that uses the phrase poor man's ex, or saying something like, hey guys. And I guess banning gendered language means that 50% of the world languages are suddenly unable to code in the Unreal Engine. And God only knows how far Epic will be willing to take this kind of censorship, and if developers do anything they disagree with, they could take their license away from the engine. That's concern number one. Next is the homogenization of game development. Now, Unreal Engine allows for a vast array of different games capable of wildly different art styles. You've got games like Sea of Thieves made with Unreal that have a very cartoony stylized aesthetic that still manages
Yeah, it's like it's always depends on the developers because Sparking Zero was made in Unreal Engine, but it doesn't look anything as remotely close to what do you call it, Silent Hill. It's always depends on developers, but most of the games look pretty samey
to be incredibly beautiful
if
graphically.
you think
But
about
then you've
that.
got games like Atomic Heart or
Art
Immortals
style
of
wise,
Avium
very
that
samey as
look like
hell.
generic asset flips, even if they
Yeah,
aren't actually asset
like look at this. Like this game compared to Silent Hill looks
flips.
exactly the
I know I
same.
can't be the only
You
one
know?
that's noticed a large number of games made with the Unreal Engine tend to have the generic Unreal Engine look about them, if you know what I
Yeah.
mean. Games that
See?
look like tech demos,
Yeah, it's so obvious to see that. Like it's so obvious to see it.
employing the same boring visual style and art style, trying to
Yeah.
achieve photorealism
Unfortunately, that's the problem. Look
in
at
the
that.
laziest way possible because the Unreal Engine has great visuals by default, and there's often little effort
Because that's the reason. Like the Unreal Engine generates the assets, right? So it no matter what you tried, like the tech is not there. No matter how much you wanted to generate it, it will it will generate the same thing over and over again, right?
To try
That's why
and
most of the
bring any
games look
true
the same
artistic
ESL.
vision to the game beyond that. And I really want to
Mm-hmm.
emphasize that point. The generic Unreal Engine look isn't because the program is being restrictive or putting up artistic
Agree.
guardrails, as evidenced by the many distinct games
Like
with
as soon as
entirely
the
unique
game
visuals that
developers
have been made on
like the
Unreal.
engine figures out,
Again, games
like it can make like a unique forest or unique areas, it's gonna be good, but it's gonna take a
like
while
Sea of
though.
Thieves, Octopath
Yeah.
Traveler, Borderlands, Little Nightmares, Unreal Engine
Mm-hmm.
was even used for developing Yoshi's Crafted World. Rather, most of the reason we get these generic looking Unreal Engine games
Yeah,
is
it looks
because of
like
lazy
this.
or passionless people who see the surface level potential of the engine and don't actually care to make something unique with the tools they have. They just want to make everything look as photorealistic as possible and spend far too much time trying to achieve the highest polygon counts imaginable and things like cloth physics for some reason. Again, stuff you'd likely see from tech demos, not proper games. Unreal Engine is capable of doing so much more than we often see from it, but because there is this obsession with graphics and realism, we just aren't getting more than the very surface level visual style. And because a large number of AAA developers only understand the engine at this basic level, many modern game
Not to
devs
mention
fail
the
to
performance issue that thing has is even more concerning, you know? Like that it's either CPU demanding or GPU demanding or both ways.
fully understand things like shaders,
Like
lighting,
that's
and
the
post
unfortunate
processing.
reality for
They
Unreal Engine 5. I never seen a game that made an Unreal Engine 5, at least from my knowledge, that runs well. It will have that wacky issue no matter what you do. I think there is one game that ran well. I don't remember it. Like almost all the games have that weird
struggle with
problem
optimizing these kinds of things, which is
with
why
the
so many Unreal
performance.
Engine games often look and run like garbage, despite
Yep, there it
initially
is.
looking very pretty in the marketing. That's why I'm convinced for most development studios, moving to Unreal Engine won't solve anything.
Right there.
I'm convinced the main reason why so many studios are moving to Unreal Engine is not because it's so much better than their own proprietary engines, but because
It's
of
easier,
these two
I think.
things. One,
Lumen?
publishers and development studios can outsource a lot of the
Oh.
work to contracted employees, oftentimes ones that are in other countries where they can get away with paying for cheap labor. We've heard many different stories over the last several years of the disastrous yet profitable strategy to outsource huge chunks of development, and moving to Unreal Engine will make that process much easier for these studios. And secondly, because of this obsession gamers have with photorealistic graphics
Look at that. That's the
for these
easiest part
studios,
about
and
this.
secondly,
This is the reason why everything looks the same. Look at
because of
this.
this obsession
Loading cells and then he just load another cell and then it just randomly generates
gamers
this.
have with photorealistic
Like in a span of 2 seconds. This is why people use this engine. And then you call yourself your game like the biggest game ever
graphics
made.
right now, Unreal Engine 5 is one of the easiest marketing tools.
It's so easy.
The average normie consumer thinks that moving to the Unreal Engine will magically fix whatever problem their favorite. The average
You think these are all
normal
handcrafted? Like
consumer
these
thinks that moving
trees right there? These? These are all generated. I don't think they handcrafted
to
this
the
at
Unreal
all.
Engine will magically fix whatever problem their favorite franchise has. But of course, a game engine alone can't make a game good. It
What
still
game
takes
is that?
tons of effort from talented individuals who know how to make a captivating art style, handcrafted and distinct animations, proper optimization skills, and general good game design knowledge. And it worries me that
Oh,
studios
Armored
and
Core.
consumers alike both think that somehow Unreal Engine is going to solve everything. Now, I'm not opposed to any of these studios making the switch to Unreal, I just want that to actually mean something. It could be a huge benefit if the developers still put in the effort needed to make their game go beyond the surface of the engine, and it will be likely easier to onboard new developers, outsource work, and transform the thousands of assets from the store to help with development. There's no problem with that if they aren't solely reliant on those things. I'm just not confident that the move to Unreal is being done because studios want to put in more effort to their games. I think it's the exact opposite.
No.
Now
Yeah,
let's
yep,
get back to the
absolutely.
topic of graphics, because most of the time I can't think of anything less important to game development for me than pushing
What the hell
photorealism
was
to its
that?
limits. There are exceptions to this, of course. Games like Battlefield 1 greatly benefited from the use of photorealistic graphics and helped with the immersion of the game. Everyone that's played that game knows how incredibly intense and real it feels while taking part in the battles in that game. But a game like Battlefield 1 was developed that way from the beginning based on comments from lead developers of DICE at the time. From the outset, the vision for Battlefield 1 was to make an incredibly immersive and realistic recreation of an alternate World War I setting. And the Frostbite engine excels in trying to achieve these goals. When backed by creative vision, realistic graphics can enhance a game's experience. But do all games need ultra realism to enhance them? Some of
Probably
the most
not.
immersive games I've ever played utilize very cartoonish or Pixar-esque
The most immersive game I recently played was Metaphor Refantasium, and that game is a fucking anime game. You know, that's something that's in the completely opposite side of
graphics and art
realism.
styles. And sometimes it is these photorealistic games. But when every game starts to look photorealistic
Is that
and
Red
art
Dead
styles,
Redemption?
and sometimes it is these photorealistic
Huh. I
the
think it's
games.
Red Dead
But when every
Redemption.
game starts to look photorealistic, won't everything just kind of feel the same?
Yes.
And we'll lose a lot of distinctness in our video games? Let me put it this way. Would Pixar benefit if instead of having that cartoony charm, switched to live action? Would that be beneficial? Or would it lose
Oh,
its
it's gonna
appeal
look like
pretty
Lions
quickly?
King, you know,
A
the
lot
new
of
one,
older games stand
Mufasa.
out artistically because of different visual styles and often the feel of a game's engine. Think of From Software games. They have an extremely distinct and tight feeling to the combat and benefits greatly from an engine that prioritizes the art direction over graphical fidelity. Not
Yeah, engine
one
that barely
single
works.
Unreal Engine Souls-like feels half as good as From Software's combat systems.
Completely wrong. This guy didn't play Lies of P. This guy did not play Lies of
And I
P.
think a lot of that is owed to the feeling that
Wait,
Unreal
Lies of
Engine
P is
has a lot
Unreal
of
Engine,
jank
right?
inherently inside its coding that prevents a lot of these Souls-likes from feeling as smooth as even Dark Souls 1. It's the reason why so many Souls-likes from feeling
Wait,
as
Artorias dodge
smooth
rolls?
as even Dark Souls
Oh
1.
my god, look at that guy. He's so scuffed. Look at Artorias'
That
dodge
prevents
rolls.
a lot of these Souls-likes from feeling as smooth as even Dark Souls 1. It's the reason why so many From Software
I don't remember him doing that at all. Jesus Christ, that was so
fans
sad.
have trouble playing any other Souls-likes. None of them feel as good or smooth. And I'm not a developer, but I think most of you know what I'm talking
I think there is one game I think I played. Wulong Fallen Dynasty was way smoother than Dark Souls. And what other game I played that's really good? Wulong Fallen Dynasty, that Plague Doctor game. What's that game called? Dionysia. Dionysia is smoother. Like there are games that play smoother. What else is there? There is two games. Liza P. Wulong Fallen Dynasty. There are three games. Liza P. Wulong Fallen Dynasty, and then Dionysia. Those are the Dark Souls game I played. That is on par with what do you call it? With Dark Souls, if not better in terms of
about when
combat.
it comes to the janky feel of most Unreal Engine games. FPS games made in Unreal often, not all, but often feel pretty janky as well. Think about the original Call of Duty Modern Warfare. COD 4's maps have a very distinctive look and most importantly feel of the game's engine. And even 17 years later, this FPS gameplay still holds up as more smooth than most modern FPS games made with Unreal. Going back to the Stalker games. With the switch to Unreal, they've lost their proprietary AI system that was so revolutionary. AI in this game
I think my guess is those engines are made for specifically for that genre. Like that engine you just mentioned would probably be better at making an FPS game. But Unreal Engine trying to be like what do you call it? Trying to be the engine that makes every game, right? So that's why it doesn't have that specific feature, you could say. You know, I think eventually that engine is gonna be bigger. You know, we are in a good time period that we are gonna make a massive breakthrough in terms of AI and generative map designs. You know, like at this point, we can even argue graphics doesn't even mean anything anymore. You know, how could you say a game has a good graphics anymore? We got Silent Hill, Alan Wake, Dragon Age Veilguard, Cyberpunk, and then what else is there? Every game nowadays has better graphics. So you can't really say that the game has good graphics anymore, to the point, you know? So I think it will get stagnated here and then move towards the artificial intelligence and then how the
Doesn't
gameplay
just
is and
act
stuff
like
like
any
that.
typical
You
FPS
know?
AI.
True. Like compared to PS3's graphics to PS4's graphics to PS4's from PS5, like those two generation leap is not that
Will
noticeable
flank
at
you,
all.
suppress you, try to flush you out with grenades, block off
Like
every
that,
path that you
not
could
that
possibly
much.
take
It
that would
isn't
allow
that.
you to regain safety. Hell, they can even hear you reload your gun and push that advantage they have. Could GSC Game World recreate this AI inside the Unreal Engine? Sure, but can they or will they? Does Unreal make trying to
No,
recreate
they
this
won't
sort of
bother.
AI harder to accomplish? Who knows? Maybe it's possible, but without being the ones behind the tech of the engine itself, developers might lose out on specific tech that made their franchise stand out.
I mean, it's not really they can like he said that the enemies can hear you reload, right? I don't think they will exactly hear you reload. It's basically a command line that just improves your reload mechanic. That's pretty much it. So they just write a code that if the player reloads, do this action. That's it. It's just the coding. Like I don't think they can hear
And my
shit.
fear is that many of these games will start to
You
feel
know?
the exact same as developers stick to the basics of the engine. And lastly,
Yeah.
has the improvement to graphics over the last 10 years been that dramatic? If you take a look at games released 10 years ago, many of them could easily be mistaken for a recently released game.
See, graphics has already
The
been
examples
stagnated.
are nearly endless. Is it worth the extra development time to improve the polygon counts
What
of
game is
every
that?
texture by a factor of
Wolfenstein?
10 when games already looked this good 10 years ago? Who is this actually appealing to? But maybe I'll make a video
Holy shit,
dedicated to the
yeah,
idea
dude.
that video
Wait,
who
that's
is this
Elden Ring, I
actually
think.
appealing
That's
to?
100%
But
Elden Ring. Elden Ring, right? I think so. I'm not sure.
maybe I'll make a video dedicated to the idea that video game
Bloodborne?
graphics have peaked many years
I don't
ago
know.
and have plateaued to the point of being almost negligible. Well, that's all for this video, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Leave a like if you did, and let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I'll see you all in the next one.
I think the pros of the Unreal Engine is just the sheer amount of detail and tessellation at a certain amount of time is just insanely higher. Like if you paid attention to it, the tessellation, that means how much polygons and each structure has, especially the rocks, got like insanely high, which I don't really care about. Like I would be like, the good graphics only appeal for me for a span of 2 minutes. I would just stand there, look at it, and then say, "Oh, it looks nice," and then I just move on and then do my thing. You know, like that's all the graphics is gonna do at this point for me.